Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RealClear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, September 28th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington bureau chief. Tom, you had an eventful week. Do you want to share?
I did, Carl. I was down in Florida early last week and spent about 90 minutes one-on-one with the 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump.
Did you very patiently explain to him that actually he did not win the election?
We did talk a lot about that. In fact, he managed to weave that into almost every answer. But our first piece we've cut the interview up into sort of three pieces. And the first one is on RealClear Politics this morning and is about, I spent some time talking to Donald Trump about the gains he made with Hispanic voters, which shocked a lot of people, right? Given his rhetoric, his focus on, his tough stance on immigration, his focus on the wall, all of that. He managed to increase
not just that, Tom. In his announcement for president, he basically proclaimed Mexican immigrants drug mules and rapists. So then, fast forward 4 years later, he vastly ups his vote totals in these counties along the Texas border. He must. Right. I'm sure he's still happy about that.
Oh, he's absolutely. And he was talking about why he did. I asked him, why is that? What was it about your policies or your personality that allowed you to do that? And he said, listen, he's like, I love Hispanics. They're smart, energetic, entrepreneurial. And he said, but they get it more than anyone, the issue of immigration on the border, in terms of what it means and it impacts in terms of crime and jobs and all of those things. And so
you mean illegal immigration?
Illegal immigration, yeah. Exactly. And that's why he won all of these counties, in South Texas, right in the Rio Grande Valley, right there along the border, by margins that Republicans haven't won there since, as he pointed out, since the Civil War, since Reconstruction.
So I guess you asked him the $64,000 question,
which is
he running again?
I did.
Are you saving that, Tom? Are you saving that for a later epised in your?
No, I was
going
to write a small thing about that because I did ask him that question, but he'd been asked it so many times before that I didn't want to waste a question on that. I didn't know how much time I was going to get with him. I didn't want to waste a question on that. But literally, right as we sat down, he said, RealClear Politics, you guys do a great job with the polls. My poll numbers are great. And I said, which ones are you talking about, Mr. President? He said, the Republican Party polls. And I said, okay, well, since you mentioned it, I was going to save this till the very end in case we ran out of time, but let me just ask you. And I asked him in a different way. I said, given where you stand in the polls, way ahead of anybody for the Republican nomination, and given where Biden currently is, 45% national job approval, 31% in Iowa, 39% in Michigan, why wouldn't you do this? Give me one reason you wouldn't run again in 2024. And he kind of said, his first attempt at the answer, he said, listen, I love the country. I hate what's happened to it, yada, yada, yada. And then I went back to it again and said, but give me one reason. And he said, well, I could get a call from my doctor. He said, I just got a physical and I got perfect marks on my
of course he did.
Annual physical, right?
He's the healthiest person that ever lived.
Yep. Yeah, well, he's, he
likes superlatives.
He does like superlatives. But he said, look, that's one reason that he wouldn't do it. He said, you never know what politics holds and or what the future holds. And I could get a call from the doctor. And he also mentioned family and the toll that takes on not just himself, but members of the family. So, but it certainly did seem, and this jives with everything that we've seen him say in other interviews, that he is leaning towards it, thinking hard about it. Probably if the decision had to be made today, I think he's more in than out, in my opinion.
Well, Tom, this is why we're looking at these numbers. Joe Biden's had a tough start, and I don't mean, I'm not disparaging, but some tough issues, Afghanistan, the border. As you pointed out, his job approval rating now has dipped to 45%. I would add that would have been, that's Trump Donald Trump was never much higher than that the whole time he was president. So, I mean, that's not a disaster. But they have Kamala Harris, who has never really established herself as a national figure. She raised all that money and got a lovely rollout. The press, people fawned on her. She was in the cover of magazines, and then she didn't even make it to the starting gate, let alone the finish line. And, the Democrats look at this. I'm starting to hear people a little worried. What are we going to do? I guess Donald Trump looks at that too and thinks, if the polls are right, if the Republican nomination is his for the asking, well, that's a pretty big temptation, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, Carl, I don't know that anybody who's been in a similar position has walked away from it.
Does William Tecumseh Sherman count?
I mean, maybe in recent memory,
if nominated, I will not run. If I elected,
maybe in recent memory, Colin Powell back, was in a somewhat similar position. But again, I mean, we'll have to wait and see what he does. Well, one more thing real quickly from the interview, Carl, that's on the news today is General Milley's going to testify before Congress today. And that was something that we talked about.
How did you describe General Milley?
Well, he described him as he has described him in previous interviews. He said he's a choker. He's a TV general and choker. And he said, I like Milley. And he said, Milley wasn't always like that. But he said, Milley's a politician and he wanted to curry favor with the Biden administration. And then he became a TV general, wanted to, and that's what ended up being his downfall. He said, I know all these generals. I worked with a lot of them. They're all good men and they're doing a good job. And I said, well, do you care to name some names? He said, no, I don't want them to become chokers like Milley. But he refused to, when given the opportunity to talk about senior military leadership, he refused to throw anybody under the bus. He said they've made some bad decisions, but he said overall he liked the generals that he had worked with, even though, for example, he was, Secretary Mattis, for example, they had a parting of the ways over Syria and decisions there. So, but he did say that, Milley he had become a political general and made some terrible decisions.
Well, that's a pretty good segue to a piece I'm working on today, Tom, and we're going to talk later this week on Friday on our podcast about, which is Real Clear Opinion Research has done a poll of registered voters in this country and how they feel about the military. And one early preview I'll give you is that there's a difference between how Americans view the rank and file military and how they view the brass. And the American voters are starting to factor in what you're talking about now, which is this politicization of the Pentagon.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Lots of good stuff, Carl. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief, and this has been the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, September 28th, 2021.